All right, Toby and Eugene, thanks for waiting.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Pretty good.
I just want to make it real quick for you guys. What's your guys' position on the uproar for the atheists taking down the cross in Ground Zero? I'm getting a lot of slack from that, being an atheist, saying that it's taken away their religious freedoms. That if the 28th Amendment does pass, that they will, atheists will wipe out, all religious freedoms and persecute them and, stuff like that. What is your, do you guys support the taking down the cross, or is it just something that, oh, well, I'll just leave it standing?
So I don't know that I've talked about this particular, the Ground Zero cross before. And by the way, it's worth noting that Edwin Kagan died this past week.
Oh.
And he was an American atheist lawyer who was, heading this up, and was a great advocate on many of the court cases. And American Atheist tends to do pretty good. They have a good record of picking the right battles. I don't know for sure that this particular case is the right battle, but I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know enough about the specifics of the case to know whether or not it was a good idea to go after it. But Edwin was very picky about what cases he was going to go forward with. And so it's possible that there are things about this that make it a good case. I'm interested to see what actually happens with that before I start laying down the law about what my thoughts are on it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the 28th Amendment.
Proposed 28th Amendment, yes.
Well, so there really isn't a proposed 28th Amendment. I could propose a 28th Amendment. There's not a proposed 28th Amendment until there's a bill in Congress.
Yeah.
So I don't know which one you're talking about.
And looking everything up, everything that comes up when we do searches for proposed 28th Amendment sends us to websites like Urban Legends and Snopes, where the claim is that there's a proposed constitutional amendment that seeks to require laws apply equally to U.S. citizens and members of Congress. And then apparently there's there's a lot of detail to go into. You could Google up that information yourself and read it. But
is that the one you're talking about?
So, yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, again, just hit Google and look up proposed 28th Amendment. You'll find a lot of information right now. But in terms of like this, in terms of the thing being this pending imminent form of legislation, that appears to be not true, and maybe a bit of scaremongering on the part of some people.
Well, a lot of this is coming from like the theists that I talk to, and religious groups that I encounter.
And those people have a very well-funded and heavily invested network of right-wing media platforms that are in business to terrify them, about the evil other that's out there. So, I would not be surprised if a lot of the media outlets that those people frequent are constantly hitting them with scare stories about, a proposed 28th Amendment, along with, Barack Obama's going to take everybody's guns, and he's going to force you to gay marry an anchor baby and things like that. There's all kinds of crazy scaremongering that they do. So your best enemy against that sort of thing are facts, always. And so, like I said, visit Snopes.com website and look up the proposed 28th Amendment and that kind of information, and you'll get detailed information.
Now, if, let's say the 28th Amendment, if it did become a bill and did not pass, what repercussions as an atheist community would become upon us?
I have no idea.
I don't know if there were any, because the conditions that would exist if a 28th proposed amendment failed are the conditions under which we live now. So I don't really know that it's a pertinent question.
So it wouldn't be like, just a bunch of religious people coming in and just implementing their ideas upon to everybody.
Well, they're already trying to do that. That's everyday politics in America.
But our secular laws kind of, counteract that, right?
Sometimes. It is now, I think, the law in Louisiana, for example, that science textbooks now have to, introduce creationist ideas in science classes, and that's a thing that's now being fought. So yeah, I mean, there are communities in the country where people are very, very simpatico to fundamentalist theocratic ideas, and they get their little bills passed regardless of what the U.S. Constitution might say, and then you end up with court battles and what have you. So it's a constant fight.
All right, thank you guys. You answered my question.
Sure.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Take care, Toby.
Thank you.
So long.
I answered it with a big fat I don't know.
Well, that's why you're a fount of information.
I know. Nico in New York, how are you?
Oh, hey gentlemen, I'm great. How are you guys doing tonight?
We are well.
Doing pretty well.
I have to tell you guys that I've been watching you for over a year now. I've watched a lot of your back videos, and you guys have really helped me come to terms with my atheism and helped me grow and develop as a human being.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
I just want you guys to know that I really, really appreciate what you do.
That's great. We'll send you some baby recipes.
Yeah, makes all the crazy calls worth it.
Thank you very much. So I just have a couple of things that I want to talk about. And first of all, I just want to put out there that I saw the film Noah on Friday.
Yeah.
And it is now my new worst movie ever that I have ever seen. I could not believe how ridiculous and stupid it was. Please do not give your money to this movie. It was the stupidest thing. Everyone in the audience was laughing by the end, and it just went off into some crazy murderous rampage. Noah was not cool. Noah was a terrified guy trying to kill his own family and murder his grandchildren.
You're making it sound awesome.
It was so ridiculously stupid.
You're making it sound amazing.
I think my favorite thing about it is that now we live in a world where children are going to be able to hear the Noah story at church and watch an absolutely terrible film by many reports that tells a slightly different story, which I think could be beneficial once they also find out about the Epic of Gilgamesh and other stuff in kind of debunking this nonsense. By the way, before you get to the rest of this, what was your previous worst film ever?
What was my previous what?
Worst movie ever.
Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman.
Okay.
I thought that was simply the most ridiculous movie I'd ever seen. So.
That was very disappointing, yes, I have to say. As a Kubrick fan, that was
disappointing.
disappointing. Anyway.
So I just want to, I've watched like hundreds of your back videos, and there's been very, very little discussion about religiosity and recovery. I was one of those unfortunate people that suffered from a severe drug addiction for about 13 years, homeless on the street, living a horrible and crazy life. Oh. And I attended AA for about 18 years, and, for about 15 years, relapsed and, just could not hold on to any sort of sane, rational recovery, because instead of working on myself, what I was trying to do was discover God and figure out who God was. And so that being the greatest burden that any man could ever try to solve, I just kept relapsing. Eventually, I came to my senses, became a rational human being through the help of your videos. I got sober through humanism and self-reliance, and have been sober for over 7 years now.
All right.
Right on.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Nicely done. All right.
It's been a fantastic life, and since I've gotten sober. But this thing about religion and recovery, I think it's doing such an incredible disservice to so many people out there. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about it, and maybe throw out some ideas.
I've talked about it before, but it's been pretty rare. The easiest thing to say is that it's a complicated landscape, because I hear from people who are in completely secular AA groups. I don't understand that. I understand that there are people who are perhaps changing this, and the amount of religion in any individual Alcoholics Anonymous group is kind of dependent on who's in the group. There are secular alternatives, secular sobriety, and others that you can look up, but they don't necessarily have a presence in every city the way AA does. There have been court rulings that have determined that AA is religion and can't be required. And while I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I find I have a lot of problems with the actual steps of AA, which to me, basically when you're starting off by saying, I have a problem and I'm helpless to do anything about it, and so I must, rely on something greater than myself, it's almost like you're replacing one addiction with another, and you become addicted to the group and the process. And I'm far more a fan of empowering people and saying, you may need help, and you're clearly have so far been incapable of handling this on your own. But if we give you the right tools and help you cultivate those tools, you will discover that you are in fact not unable to do this once you have the right tools.
Exactly, and that I think is where AA really, really gets it wrong, is that it's immediately disempowering to instill in the person this premise that, the words "you can't," right there, it's already defeatist. And it's an entirely different thing, though, to say exactly what Matt just said. You can't right now, but with the correct tools. And they don't. But you are going to have to do the hard work, but we'll give you better tools to do it with. And AA starts from the premise, no, you can't, and it continues that way. And any progress you make is this thing that you have to still give credit to God to, or the higher power, or whatever they want to put it. And I think that that is necessarily a recipe for failure, because the minute now that you lose any kind of confidence or have any moment of skepticism about that higher power that you're now just handing all your problems over to, boom, you're right back in the toilet. And there's no getting out of that.
I have a second major.
It's a Ferris wheel that you're on.
I have a second major objection to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that is it's very difficult to determine how effective this process actually is. You'll hear from people all the time about it saved my life and everything else, but they are not particularly honest when it comes to publishing their recidivism rates, because if anybody falls off the wagon, then they are removed from the program. They didn't complete the program. So they've constructed this program that you can never complete. And so they cite all the people who are still working the program and are sober and say, look, we basically got a 100% success rate. And that's because if somebody falls out, well, they failed, the program didn't fail. And so you have no idea how effective this actually is. It's a difficult thing to study.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with how much you guys do understand and get it. I didn't think that the general person out there really understood it as well as you guys did. And I will add to what you guys have already said with this idea. Can you imagine someone who has just spent 13 years shooting heroin and has nothing and has lost his family and everything else, and you walk into an AA room and now they say, you must discover God if you want to succeed. No other human being before us throughout history has ever really discovered God, and now that burden falls on me as Chunky to figure it out. It's absolutely insane.
All you have to do is what no human in history has done, and you will recover.
I'm sitting here working with a brain that has been, chemically altered and may not be reliable in every aspect, and you want me to solve the biggest mystery in the world in order to get clean.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And I guess we've kind of hit it right on the tail on the donkey with your points and that point added in. And I really wonder where recovery would be if the 12 steps had never come along. And I guess that's something we'll never really know, but maybe in the future things will change. Like you said, there are secular groups popping up. They're not really gaining steam, though, but hopefully they will over time.
Yeah, baby steps. That's a thing another thing that really kind of bothers me about the 12-step programs in group like AA is the way in which they really have their hooks into, for example, the prison system, the criminal justice system, and participation in these groups is in many ways a requirement. And I think that plays into these cultural attitudes that religion equals, moral correctness and improvement. And again, that's a false message to send, because again, a lot of guys who are in jail, they know that if they participate in religious service, they'll get time served, right? And knocked off of their time. And there's nothing sincere about it. You're just doing it to. But again, it just perpetuates this message that you want to be a good person in our culture. Well, you have to have an invisible friend. And
I find it really interesting, too, that the people that are most outspoken in AA are the ones who have had the biggest religious experience, whether it's fake or real. But that's what drives them to bring AA into all these places. They think they're doing God's will and something good for all of humanity because they've had a good experience in AA, and yet they've actually destroyed a lot of people, myself included, for many, many years while I was in there.
I think that, we're still kind of in our infancy in understanding the brain and understanding things like addiction, understanding things like depression and various mental illnesses that have been stigmatized. And I'm really optimistic that as we continue to learn and study, that we will remove some of the stigma and actually find better ways to treat people that don't put, for example, I'm diabetic. Maybe I did it to myself. Maybe I had a genetic deficiency that was going to turn out this way no matter what. If I tell somebody I'm diabetic, they don't kind of look at me, in disgust or suspicion or blameful. And so if someone has an addiction or depression, bipolar, whatever, this isn't something that they chose for themselves. It's the idea that, oh, you chose to have a drink, and therefore all of the things that followed after that are now your fault. That is an oversimplification that denies the reality of how our brains work. And I think we're getting better.
Yeah. Oh, I hope so too. And Matt, I do also want to wish you a happy birthday. And again, just thank you so much for all you've done for me as I've watched all your past videos and everything I've learned from you.
Thank you.
One last thing before I go. You're doing your homework on Cy, right? Because you know how manipulative and dishonest and angry he gets during his debate, correct?
So I'll tell you, I don't know how much homework I'm going to do. I'm not overly familiar. I haven't bothered to watch too many of his or listen to too many of his previous debates. Most of the atheists that he's interacted with in the past have emailed me immediately to let me know, what to watch out for, et cetera. I know the arguments that he's presented, and I know what my position is on him. I'll probably do a little bit of research. On the other hand, I might just get drunk and show up that way. Because, I've already spent enough time. One of the things that's going to be difficult, and I don't mean, in the sense that this is going to be, extremely hard, but it's these concepts, the transcendental argument for the existence of God and these really kind of dense, logical, philosophical positions, they don't play well at debates. It's, without charts and graphs, these are some difficult concepts to explain to people. And so the last thing you want to do is have your audience's eyes glaze over and they just kind of stare at you and go, okay, I don't know what he just said, but it either sounded good or sounded good.
Don't let him get away with 40 minutes of that so that you can only get 20 minutes of good meat and bones out of him, because he will try to do that. I've watched all these other debates where he just keeps pummeling you with these questions because he wants you to admit that you can't know everything, and if you can't know everything, then God must exist. You nip that in the bud right away.
The fallacy of that should just be nakedly obvious, right? I mean, we don't know. He doesn't know everything, and so
he can't be wrong though. Because he has God as a foundation.
Yeah, so I would say apparently omniscience is a requirement to not believe in God, but it's not a requirement to believe in God.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of definitions and concepts explained and discussed in the opening, and then we'll go from there. And there is a timeline for this debate. It's not just we're going to sit down and talk for an hour.
So this is going to be a moderated thing.
Yeah, there's a moderator.
Yeah, that's good.
And I like a lot of back and forth and questions. So one of the things that we did was, like, I have 10 minutes to ask questions, and the time belongs to me, so that if he's avoiding or if going down whatever, I can stop and ask him. We're going to do the same thing for both of us. We'll see how it goes.
Okay. Well, good luck to you, Matt, and Martin. Thank you for being here tonight. And I'll talk to you guys soon, hopefully sometime. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Nico.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I would think that if I were going to debate Cy, my strategy would be to simply repeat verbatim absolutely every argument that he just made to me, except I would replace the word God with Gus the Magic Cosmic Hippo. And my argument would be just as good.
Yeah.
And hopefully, people would get the reductio ad absurdum that I was doing, but some people, I terrify myself that I might actually convert people to worshiping Gus. Some people might be swayed. And then
as long as you actually publish a book about Gus the Magic Cosmic Hippo,
and release a DVD,
that he wants you to think for yourself, and then you're okay.
And release, and of course, got to stack up those DVDs too.